Hello everyone, welcome back to another lunchtime lesson. I am eating my lunch and going to take a break and get this message out about the biggest mistake that I made during my healing journey. If you are new here, my name is Nicole, and if you are returning, welcome back, and to the new folks, welcome as well. On this channel, we acknowledge the bad things that have happened to us in relationships, whether it's with family and friends or work or romantic, but we acknowledge those things and then we pivot and we work on our healing and becoming the best versions of ourselves. So I wanted to talk quickly today about the biggest mistake that I made during my healing journey, and one that I don't want you to make because it set me back for years. And that was falling into the trap of believing that saying time heals all wounds. That is not true. I found out the hard way that just because you take a long break, say, between relationships, it does not necessarily mean that you have healed from whatever trauma you endured during that relationship. There was a period of time that I've never been one to jump from relationship to relationship when you're talking about romantic relationships. And so it's nothing for me to be single for 3 years or 5 years or whatever. And I made the mistake, however, of thinking that just because I had been, single for so long, for years, then I must be over the trauma of the former relationship, and that, things should be, good the next time around. Well, nothing could have been further from the truth. And I'm going to give you some things to look for to identify when you know you're not healed, and then something that you can look for that would give you an indication that you are healed or on the healing process. So a couple of things to think about. If you haven't forgiven, that's the number one sign that you are not healed. If you cannot truly say that I have forgiven them, I'm not waiting on an apology from them, I'm not looking to seek revenge, but I have forgiven because it's what I need to do for me, to set me free, so that I am not allowing this person to control me from the outside. They control my feelings of anger or bitterness or resentment, and that is giving them too much power. So forgiveness is key for you. It doesn't mean that you're giving them a pass. It doesn't mean that you agree with what they did. But for you to move on, you need to be able to forgive. And I have another video on the channel about truly forgiving, and you can take a look at that. I give you a technique that I used to kind of let go of everything that I needed to do to forgive my father. And that is a very effective technique, and I'll go ahead and just share it with you just briefly. I won't go into as much depth as I did on the video, but if you are finding that you are harboring some resentment or you're harboring some bitterness, but you either can't face the person to tell them that you forgive them for whatever reason, maybe you no longer are in proximity, you don't live close to them, or maybe it would not be a safe situation for you to face them. Whatever it is, try this strategy. Get a chair, an empty chair, and just pretend that that person is sitting there, and get out everything that you need to say about how you feel, about what happened, and then that you are releasing them from anything that you would hold against them, and that you are forgiving them. That is what I did with my father, and it was like I could feel the load just automatically come off my shoulders. So if you haven't forgiven, that is the number one sign that you have not healed, regardless of how many years have gone by, because decades had gone by between my last encounter with my father. So make sure that you know that you have forgiven. Second would be if you are triggered easily. If a song, a familiar place, a familiar sound makes you get triggered and think of the person who harmed you, anything that would bring back a triggering memory that's negative, you are not completely healed. In my life, I can tell you the craziest things that would trigger me, such as when I came out of my first relationship, my first marriage, I was so traumatized because my husband kept calling my phone, and I was afraid of him. I was very afraid of him. And I was so afraid that I could not drive down streets that I knew that he frequented. That was his route home. I was a nervous wreck, always worried about my safety. And when I got up the courage to leave, he called and called and called and called and called. And that ringtone, it would just send me, I would jump, I was startled. The fear would come up on the inside just by the phone ringing, because that familiar ringtone in my mind got equated to him, and it was causing me to be triggered. Anything like that, anything that triggers you, places that you went together, meals that you often had to get, anything that would trigger you. If you're easily triggered, you're not yet healed. If you have, so yes, lost my train of thought, but going back, if you have not forgiven, if you are easily triggered, and if you have not done any active work. So when I mean active work, you haven't been in any counseling, you haven't gone through any coaching, you haven't read any books, you haven't discussed how you were feeling, because oftentimes in abusive relationships, you are isolated and you can't discuss with family or friends what you're going through. If you haven't done any work to heal, to figure out why the situation happened, oftentimes that's going to require us to go back and look at our past, why you made the decisions you made. A lot of us have to look at our relationships with our parents when we were young. That type of work, that painful work, because sometimes you have to dig up past memories, things that were hurtful. A lot of us grew up without fathers that were actively present in healthy ways in our lives. And so we have a father wound. Some of us have a mother wound. So that type of work to help you figure out why you made the decisions you made, how you got into that relationship, how it was able to continue so long, how you allowed yourself to endure what you endured, meaning you didn't have boundaries. You had become a people pleaser because you weren't affirmed when you were younger. That type of work where you're digging and you're talking with someone who is a professional or who is further down the road in their healing journey, that can help you. If you have not forgiven, if you have not done that hard work to look at how and why the relationship was able to continue, those types of things are indicators. You're easily triggered. Those are types of things that are indicators that you haven't healed. And so if you're experiencing any of that, then know that you have got to do that hard work. Time alone is not going to fix it. You know, it's just been some months or some years since you haven't been around that person, or you haven't been in another relationship of that type. That does not automatically mean that you're good. So do yourself a favor and don't, just let the time go by, get into another relationship and find, oh my gosh, this is very much similar to the last one, because that you've just lost all that time. So those would be my tips on indicators that you're not completely there yet. And if you're not, that's okay, because it's a process. Healing is a process, especially when you've been traumatized, and especially if it's been more than once. It's going to be a process. And that some of that work is really hard. Forgiveness sometimes can be really hard. Depending on the severity of your trauma, letting that go can be hard. Digging deep to find out how you've come to make the decisions that you've made, that can be very painful to dig through. So if you aren't completely there, don't beat yourself up. I just don't want you to make the mistake that by not doing any of the hard work, like forgiveness and counseling and digging deep into your feelings and into your past, I just don't want you to make the mistake that by just letting time pass and not doing that work, that you're going to be okay. So the big question is, how do I know? Other than those indicators, how do I know if I am truly healed? And to that, I would say one of your biggest indicators is going to be if you can honestly and truly wish that person who hurt you well. If you don't wish anything bad, that you're not trying to get revenge. If you could even see yourself helping them, as crazy as that sounds, if you could even see yourself helping them if they were in need. I'll give you my example again. One of the men in my life that hurt me very deeply was my father. My mother was battered and abused in front of me. I had to go live in a home for battered women and children when I was 8 years old. My mom's head had been hit so many times that she lost her memory temporarily. And I saw rage from my father growing up, flipping tables that had full entire hot meals, and he didn't care if it fell in your lap and you got burned, and screaming, and obviously physical abuse. It was not a good situation. But when my father was dying, and I was in my 30s. So from the time I was 8, now I'm in my 30s. Decades had passed. But I had implemented in that process of time, I had implemented that strategy of talking to an empty chair, imagining that he was in that chair, and expressing to him how I felt, but that I was releasing that and forgiving him. Do you know, when he was dying and I was in my 30s, I was able to be his caretaker. I handled all of his medical decisions. I was at the hospital every day, even though I was now married and I was carrying a child, and I was not comfortable, but pregnant, went to the hospital every day with my mother, the woman who he beat to the point that she had no memory. She was the one that was cooking the meals that we were taking. We took him to every appointment, and when he was in the hospital for extended periods of time, we were there every day. We were making the decisions, talking with the doctors and the staff, arranging finally for his funeral. But how were we able to do that? Because we truly had healed. So that, and I'm not saying that you have to go that far in helping a person who has harmed you, but even if you could envision in your mind Okay, worst case scenario, if they were on the side of the road, in a ditch, in the middle of a snowstorm, yeah, okay, I probably would pull over. That, I mean, even if you can imagine that you could possibly find it in yourself to help that person if they really needed it, I can say that's an indicator that you have truly healed. You don't wish anything bad, you don't want revenge, and you could possibly even help them if need be. So that is my lunchtime lesson. Don't believe the hype. Time does not heal all wounds. Okay, guys, that's it for today. I'll see you on the next one. Bye, y'all.